Hello, everybody. Hello, 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 hello. Welcome to an amazing 45 to 60 minutes that we're going to be spending together with two very smart individuals that I have a chance to collaborate with here in this panel discussion. Not only smart, but just good people who do great work in their business, but then also just great people to hang with and the like. So I'm looking forward to this. Welcome to those of you who are on with us on Zoom and those of you joining us on LinkedIn Live. Would you do me a favor? Let us know that you're here. If you're in Zoom, say hello in the chat. Let us know where you're calling in from or you're joining us. LinkedIn Live, let us know there in the chat as well. We'll try to say hello throughout the time we're together. And also, if you have questions, I'm going to be monitoring that. Please, please, please put them in. We want to pull you in. So welcome. Welcome to this panel discussion on a roadmap to growth for distributors. And the two individuals that I get to spend this hour with, you see on the screen, is Pradip and Mike. Before we get going, let's just say hello to everybody. And Pradip, welcome. I'm glad we're doing this together. And will you tell everybody just a little bit about yourself, bud?
Yes, Doug, thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And I look forward to what we learned with distributors. At the end of today's 45-60-minute session, you can walk away with at least one item that you can put to practice right away. So we look forward to this great session and look forward to your questions. And again, thanks, Doug, Mike. Nice meeting you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Pradip. Mike, hello, hello, hello.
Hi, Dirk. Thanks for having us join too. It's our pleasure. A2Go is a company that's aimed at making AI implementable and easy to use and inexpensive to use. And so I hope we can share some ideas on how to accomplish that within every company.
I know you can. Easy to use and inexpensive to use. You pulled me in, buddy. All right. So that's great. Hey, guys, and before I kick this thing off, and so that everybody knows, what we're going to do is I'm going to take about 10 minutes to set the stage with this thought of the age of acceleration. That Pradip has some thoughts, and then Mike has some thoughts, and then all three of us will come back together, right? And we'll have that panel discussion and build off of each other. And Pradip and Mike, just before I go on, I just want you to know people are saying hello from all over. Jen, great to see you. Mark, good to see you. St. Petersburg, Florida is in the house. Trish Lilly, great to see you. Thanks for being here. Mary Anderson, great to see you. Bart, hello, hello, hello. Gretchen, Gail, Devin, Bill, they keep coming. And Joe on LinkedIn Live, I see you, buddy. Great to see you. Pradip and Mike, I'll see you guys in just a bit. I'll set the stage here, okay?
Sounds good.
All right, we'll see you in just a bit. So guys, again, thanks for being here. What the three of us want to do is we want to talk about this roadmap for growth for distributors. And, several years ago, I did the first, and at that time, the only research for the state of innovation throughout distribution. And that ended up in this book called Innovate, How Successful Distributors Lead Change in Disruptive Times. And we've been talking about this age of disruption for a long, long time. But as we start building the roadmap for growth as we come out of the pandemic, I think we need another mindset shift. And the mindset shift that I believe we need to go through is that we are moving from the age of disruption to the age of acceleration. Think about it. From the age of disruption to the age of acceleration. 8,760. What does that mean? Well, on March 12th of this year, 2 months ago, we hit the 1-year mark of the pandemic. 8,760 hours had passed by of this pandemic that we've all been managing and leading through. And now it's 8,760 hours plus 2 months. And in this 8,760 hours plus, new rules have been rewritten at an exponential rate. If we're going to develop our roadmap for growth, that we must think strategically, more strategically, maybe than we ever have before. New rules have been rewritten in terms of how we live, how we work, how we play, and how we're going to have to lead our organizations into the accelerated future. The age of acceleration, just some examples, right? McKinsey will tell us that there was 10 years of e-commerce adoption in just 8 weeks. That's acceleration. We all know what's happened to how we work in our day-to-day jobs with the Zoom and what we're doing right here now on LinkedIn Live and using Zoom, right? Look at what's happened to the economy, or Bitcoin, if you don't mind. Take a look at the growth of Bitcoin in just a short period of time. My point is, everywhere in society, we're moving from disruption to age of acceleration. How we entertain ourselves, that has changed. And it's not just digital acceleration. Take a look at what's happened to our health as a society, as individuals, the employees that are all around us. The pandemic, as you see on the screen, has caused a huge acceleration in terms of anxiety and depression, as you see on the screen. Through this pandemic, our country, our society has also been dealing at an accelerated rate with diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the point is, every parts of our lives, new rules are being rewritten in terms of how we live, work, and play. And we've gone beyond the age of disruption to the age of acceleration. If you want to know a little bit more about this, several months we did some research with our partner Infor on technology acceleration. And we did some great research in terms of the acceleration that distributors are using in this digital transformation. And one of the data points that we found is in the last 8,760 hours, 86% of distributors agree that digital transformation, the things that Mike and Pradip are going to be talking about in just a little bit, is absolutely an urgent priority. And we have all that data for you in a ebook. If you're interested in that ebook, put in the chat ebook, and Lindsay on my team will ensure that we reach out to you and get that for you. Okay, everybody? All right. So let me give you one, what I think is an eye-opening example of what's happening to, with, and for distributors in this age of acceleration. You know, if you take a look at this chart, you see that dotted line on the bottom. What that suggests is how we've been able to manage and lead our organizations. Dare I even say our lives personally in the past. What that shows is a linear growth. But in this age of acceleration, you see the path forward takes a hockey stick approach. That red line shows both opportunity and risk for all of our organizations, right? If we continue to think in a linear fashion, but the world is accelerating around us, that provides both opportunity and challenge for us, all right? So let me give you this example. Mayer is an amazing organization, Electrical Distributor Plus, out of Birmingham, Alabama. Wes Smith, the CEO of this company, shared this story with me recently. What Wes shared with me is that one of his largest MRO customers came to him and said, Wes, we need Mayer to partner with these two distributors, a plumbing distributor and a fastener distributor. By the way, this customer didn't say you can choose which plumbing distributor and which fastener distributor. We really need you to partner with these two distributors. And what they were trying to do was drive different business outcomes. This customer wanted to reduce their PO costs by 2/3. And they didn't care how they partnered, but they wanted Mayer to find a way to do it. And they came to them and said, you have 3 weeks to make the decision if you can make this type of partnership happen. 3 weeks. A demand or a request of one of your largest customers. The age of acceleration, new behaviors of your customers are driving new models going forward, as an example. Does that make sense? So watch what happened. After Mayer said yes and started driving this thought process of how do we develop a platform with us as electrical, plumbing, and fastener distributor, they made that decision. They started moving towards it. Then the customer came back and said, all right, now that you've made that decision, know that we're not interested just in the 3 of you, but there are 17 different verticals that we need you to find a way to build into a platform to go from the 3 of you to 17. And by the way, we need you to act fast. This age of acceleration, new rules are being rewritten faster than any of us had to deal with in the past. New behaviors of our customers, of our end users, of our employees. And by the way, all of us have different expectations as well. We've entered this age of acceleration. So as I hear Wes telling me this story, I ask him the question. I said, Wes, how long do you have to build out this platform, this Amazon type platform that includes all 17 verticals? I wanted to know, about this acceleration that's taking place. How long? And Wes told me that they're taking a strategic view of developing this platform, and that they're going to develop a crawl, walk, run strategy to do that. Crawl, what he said is, in the first 2 months, we're going to put together the processes and systems where the customer can place an order with all three of us. They're going to place one order, but you know what? They're probably going to get 3 or 5 different boxes. That's the crawl. The walk, he says, we're going to build out the platform. We're going to probably co-locate some products and the like in our warehouses together. And yeah, they'll place one order and they'll get one shipment from all 3 of us. He says that's going to take maybe 4, 5, 6 months. I said, how about the 17? He said, well, Dirk, that's the run. And I said, how long until that is going to be built out? And his answer was, the customer's expectations is all of that within the... Gentlemen, ladies, I don't know about you, but I truly believe, Pradip, Mike, I believe we have entered a new age, from this age of disruption to this age of acceleration. And if we are going to build that roadmap for growth in the age of acceleration, there are 6 characteristics that I will quickly go through with you, and so that we can set the context. And you can think about this as you develop your strategy and your roadmap going forward. Okay, everybody? So number 1, I think if we're going to build our roadmap for growth in this age of acceleration, as leaders, we must absolutely be obsessed with growth. It's the mindset. And we have this belief that the business is either growing or dying, and that growth is going to become a guiding principle as we develop these roadmaps in the age of acceleration. Number 2, I believe we have absolutely no choice to embrace technology. I know there's a lot of distributors out there looking at the investments, looking at the complexity of it. In the age of acceleration, I believe we must fully embrace the technology and digital transformation that is inevitable in this channel. And we must see the world as it is, not how we would like it to be. So I'm excited to talk to Mike about AI and analytics, and Pradip about AI and analytics and data, because they absolutely can help us build that roadmap. Number 3, we must absolutely be nimble. Our culture must be prepared. We must be thinking about our culture for a lot of reasons. Harder and deeper than ever before, because in this age of acceleration, it's not necessarily what the change is. You're not going to be able to predict that, but you're going to need to have the culture and the team who is prepared to change and to innovate and to be nimble going forward. Next is strategic partnerships. In this age of acceleration, things are changing so fast. For you to be able to have all the capabilities that the market is going to require in-house under your roof is, for many of us, not possible. We have to think about partnerships differently going forward. Partnering with the Mikes of the world, with the Pradips of the world, as an example, and others. Next, we must be developing a team of leaders. In this age of acceleration, if change, strategic thinking, developing the roadmap that we're going to be talking about today, if it gets held up because one individual is the only decision maker in your organization, in this age of acceleration, we will absolutely get passed by. We must be consciously developing that team of leaders, not for who built the organization for today, but the team of leaders who are going to be required for this roadmap for tomorrow. And then number 6 is this thought process of constructive paranoia. In the age of acceleration, I believe as leaders must absolutely have this mindset where we wake up every day facing the future, identifying the next opportunity, but having this healthy awareness of the threats and constantly questioning if our business is built, again, not for what got us here today, but is this organization built for what the market is going to require tomorrow? And it requires a completely different thought process and strategic process that we bring to our organizations going forward. So, Pradip, Mike, I believe we've entered this age of acceleration. I think it's important we take that into context as we develop our roadmap for growth going forward. And Pradip, welcome, buddy. I'd love for your thoughts on this age of acceleration and how data and analytics play a role in that.
Yes, Doug, thank you. I mean, I love the 6 traits. I think it's very thoughtful and very well put together. And every time you went through each trait, the one thing it kept resonating me was decisions, right? Decision making. Not only have these things accelerated, but your decision making also should accelerate. Earlier, you were making fewer decisions over a short period of time. Now you're making more decisions, right? Think about this: the classical 80-20 rule. 80-20, right? I mean, there is a famous 80-20 rule that we always apply. When it comes to customers, your 20% of the customers account for 80% of the revenue. The same thing with products and so forth. But in today's world, all of us are making so many different decisions, and we cannot afford to make all those decisions using emotions, using biases, and pointed out rightly, age of acceleration, which means things are moving very quickly. And if we still continue to make decisions using emotions and biases, we are not going to sustain for a long period of time. And the competition is not doing it. And all people are trying to use as much information as possible. So what we want to do is do this. Our goal is at ActVantage, and as I say, is decision making. So right now we spend 80% of our time using emotions, biases, and all experience to make decisions. And we use only about 20% of the data. Where decision to validate those decisions. After 6 months, a year, we use data to see if all the decisions that we made have paid fruit, or have we been rewarded. What we're trying to do is we're trying to switch that. Exactly, there is room for emotion, there's room for biases and experience. That's not going to go away, because that is what makes every single decision relevant. So we want to use 20% of your time to do that, but leverage 80% of the information that your organization collects on a day-to-day basis. My former mentor used to say, Dr. Barry Lawrence from Texas A&M, he used to say, distributes are giant information machines. We've got so much data. That's the positive side. On the negative side is we have so much data, but we still haven't found out the best way to harness those data so that we can make our decisions quicker, more efficiently. So that's what we want to talk about today. How do we use data to really make those decisions? Because in an organization, not only is the leadership team, every single individual is making decisions. If all of us rely on our emotions and experience to make decisions, then we will not be able to get to a consistent approach. Everybody is going to be doing things on their own. So there is some oversight to our decision making, and we strongly believe that data and analytics will form that oversight for your decision making to keep us moving towards profitable growth.
Pradip, I think that's amazing. I really do. And I'm in the back, I'm laughing a little bit because I'm saying, you know, to your point about emotion and could you imagine if me made all my decisions on emotion? Oh my God, it would be a wreck, right? So thank you. So let's go on.
If all three of us made decisions based on emotion, we would not be doing this webinar today.
Well said, man. Really well said. Thank you. So why don't you introduce us to ActVantage and take us on this journey, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Doug. So at ActVantage, our goal is to help distributors grow profitably using analytics and about talent development. In short, we are all about simplifying analytics, because we know analytics sometimes can be very threatening. It sounds like it's very complex, but our goal is, I mean, a lot of decisions we make are we are data supported. We use a little bit of data which comes from experience. Our goal is to really take much broader information and help using data to keep your decisions much focused. And as we went through this process, as you can see, all these 7 books that we published as part of our relationship with the National Association of Wholesalers, and each of these best practices form the foundation of ActVantage. And there are 4 key decisions that companies make very frequently, very consistently. And no matter how things change around us, these 4 decisions have to be made by someone, a system, or a combination in one form or the other. At ActVantage, our goal is to really help companies with those 4 key analytics. One is your sales analytics, anything to drive your top line. The second thing is your inventory management, because if you don't have the product, we cannot create value to the customer. The third thing is pricing. And the last thing is suppliers. Dirk talked about forming those strategic relationships. And this is where analytics can help you, because you are not going to have all your suppliers, all your customers as strategic partners. There are a handful who will fit the bill of being a strategic. And rest of the other customers and suppliers, we have to work with them, but we cannot use a single size fits all approach. And we have to devise different strategies and different mechanisms to work with those other customers and suppliers. At ActVantage, we streamline the process for you, and we use data to help you make those decisions on a consistent basis.
Fantastic, fantastic.
And as we talk about it, I mean, think about analytics. As a leader, a lot of you sitting here and making several decisions. We have a roadmap for sales. We have a roadmap for growth. Every company wants to grow. At the beginning of the year, all of us sit together. We say, okay, this is what we want to target. We want to shoot for a 10% growth. And then you take it down, you break it down by locations, break it down by product categories, market. To analytics, most companies brush everything aside and treat this as a technology project. Technology is a requirement. To Dirk's point, we have to embrace technology. But before that, you need to decide if you want to bring in technology today, now how you process it. Because if your processes are right now broken, then if you bring in technology is just going to wreak havoc in your organization. So there is a sequence to bringing in technology, but we do agree that technology has a huge role to play in the overall process. So when you think about your analytics strategy, the first thing is, what is your goal? I mean, why do you want to use analytics? Because just because my competitor, my distribution companies as part of the association, they talk about analytics. I don't want to use analytics. I mean, it should not be a me too approach. I want to do analytics. So take a step back and think about what you're trying to streamline, and which of those decisions internally are you trying to use data, and what's your analytics? Very straightforward. Jump into bringing a technology. They like a product. They say, let's bring the product in. It will solve all the product problems for us. It does not work that way, because if you don't have people in, it's purely a one company, maybe that would work. An organization is a sum of decisions that people take. When people are able to influence every single decision, to ensure strong process in place before bringing in technology. So those 5 steps is what we would think when you think about analytics internally. What is the goal for analytics? What are you trying to do with the analytics? Next thing, which does analytics do? There are certain decisions. I mean, if you look at a new customer segment, or you're looking at a particular large customer is asking you to work on a project, over there, you might have less information, it's more about discussion, more about discovery process. In that place, analytics might not give you a huge helping hand, because you're going to work more of experience and it's more data gathering stage. So think about the decisions in your company that can be done better using analytics. We don't have to make every single decision on a day-to-day basis using numbers, but there are some decisions you cannot afford to make without using any data or any information behind it. The third step is,
I'm sorry,
Dirk, if you could.
There you go.
Thank you. The third one is, how will you create value? Who's going to use this information? The age-old question of what's in it for me? No, or your employee or your part of your team member, what's in it for me? Because if they do not see that it's going to improve their ability to do things faster, quicker, then nobody's going to really, when it comes to communicating this internally to the organization. And the fourth thing is, what capabilities must be in place? What kind of technology do you need? Do you need your own in-house analytics team, or do you need outside help? Those are things that will automatically fall in place when you answer the first 3 questions. And the last thing, people, process, and technology are all involved in moving the organization in the right direction. And as we go through this, we figured out, when companies go through, there are 4 critical decisions that most companies know they should be using analytics and data, but the people's expertise to really take care of it. Because when companies say they don't have a process, it's not true. It means that people are the process. they are making all the processes in their mind and they're doing it for them, but it may not be consistent. So what we want to do is, if you look at, Doug, if you could pull up that slide again for a second. So when we looked at our research on growth, we studied growth for several companies. We looked at how they grew, what are the different aspects of growth, how did they encounter these different challenges, and we kind of distilled that into something called as a growth cube that you see on screen. There are three. One is you generate growth. The second thing is you manage growth. And the third thing is you sustain growth. In the generating growth, most of it has got to do with the top line. So at the bottom left portion, everything to do with your customer segmentation, your sales information. So that is where the first core analytics sits on. Once you bring in the top line, the next thing is managing the top line, making sure that you're not focused only on revenue, but you also want to focus on profitability. At that point, you start looking at pricing and inventory management, because without the product, you don't. Of course, there is service, you cannot add value. If you can't add value, then you can't price accordingly. So when it comes to managing growth, you have to look at both inventory and pricing, because it's a value, and the value consistently over a long period of time. You definitely need to have a strong alliance with the suppliers, and that's where the supplier management or stratification comes in place, because often that is a blind spot that distributors do not get to until for a long period of time. Because if you're growing significantly fast, you want to make sure that you have those strategic core group of suppliers identified and find a way to work with them more closely, rather than just focusing on what it means to your customer. So those are the 4 key decisions that companies take on a day-to-day basis, and that is what companies need to move to. If it's important and urgent, if it's not in your important and urgent grid, it has to be moved there, because that is what is going to help drive profitable growth in the long term. And there are 2 aspects to it. When it comes to analytics, I wanted to think about a couple of dimensions. One is we focus a lot on analytics creation. I mean, most of us can look at data. We can create any kind of analytics. Is it good? Maybe not. But is it sufficient? Absolutely. But that is only a small portion of the overall analytics implementation. Where most companies do not pay too much attention is the analytics consumption. Think about who's going to use this information. It's not that if my company, I mean, if they provide me information, they tell me you have to use this information, I would find every single way possible to not use the information. Because one thing, I don't trust it. I'm not confident in the information. So when you think about analytics, there's 2 aspects to it. The creation is getting all the numbers, creating those dashboards, creating all those recommendations. It's all fantastic. But look at who's going to use that information. Spending as much time, or if not more, on analytics consumption is very critical, because if you don't get analytics consumption, think about this as 1. If analytics creation is 1 and analytics consumption is 2, you times these 2, you get profitable decision making. But think about if analytics consumption is 0, then no matter what value you put on analytics or how much you create, then you're not going to really help drive profitable growth. So what we want to highlight in this slide is, think about both these attributes, the creation and the consumption aspect of it, because you cannot really move forward without the analytics consumption team being on board. Maybe your sales force, your purchasing team, your customer service reps, your warehouse personnel, your freight delivery personnel, anybody in the organization. If you don't have their buy-in, no matter what kind of analytics you use, it is not going to move the needle.
Yeah, makes sense.
And the last thing, I mean, these are few things that we want to highlight here that distributors should strive for. The first thing is, as I said before, move these analytics, these 4 decision making, move it to your important and urgent list, because your competition is doing it, everybody around us is doing it. So we have to really use data. It's not that we don't have data, we have all the information we need. It's a matter of bringing it and making it a top priority. The second thing is, you cannot afford to look at all these 4 decisions independently, because what you do on sales impacts your inventory. What you do on inventory impacts your suppliers, and what you do in all 3 impacts your pricing. So you have to really look at an integrated approach. All these 4 analytics should be shared across the company. Every single influencer in the company, decision influencer, should have access to this information. That takes us to the 3rd bullet point. We can't afford to take a siloed approach going forward. We can't think, okay, this is my sales function, this is my purchasing function, this is my finance function. It is no longer like that, because what last 12 months has proved to us is you can't really afford to think anymore like that. You have to think cross-functional. Your sales team is your entire organization. Your marketing team is your entire organization. So you have to go bring to that collaborative mindset, moving from a silo to a more interactive approach. And that is when all these 4 decisions come together. And the fourth thing is, it's not technology, process, and people. It's always people, process, technology in the same order. If we don't get that order right, we might get quick wins in a short term, but long term, any initiative is going to fail. So think about the order. It's people, then process, and then you bring in technology to kind of make that process more consistent. And the last thing I want you to leave with is, analytics creation is one thing, you can do it. Analytics consumption is the next stage. The last one is analytics innovation. What is great today will not be good tomorrow. What is good tomorrow will not even be common the day after. So you have to continuously innovate in terms of on the analytics side. So these are 5 things when it comes to any analytics initiative or any initiative internally, something to keep in mind, because this is what we've been pushed to in this age of acceleration. Quite significant and does impact distributors' growth a big time.
Pradip, that's fantastic, man. I really appreciate what you've provided to us, and you've really started to structure that roadmap for growth for us. I loved how you concluded too, when you said, you know, what's great today, right, is not going to be great tomorrow. And probably half of our listeners is going to say, Dirk, what are you talking about here? Because they don't know who Mary Lou Retton is. But when Mary Lou Retton went and got the first perfect 10 in the Olympics for gymnastics, after the Olympics, the reporter said, Mary Lou, are you going to come back and do it again next time? And her response was, no, I'm retiring. And they said, why? You're the best in the world. You're the only one that's had a 10. And her response, Pradip, was, I'm retiring because what I know, a 10 in one Olympics is only routine in the next.
Exactly.
Right? That's exactly what you're talking about there. That
great point, Dirk. Absolutely. Great analogy.
Continuous innovation. Pradip, thank you so much. You've set the stage great. We'll be right back to you, all right? So you guys, if you don't mind, yeah, thank you. Let's pull in Mike Romeri from Analytics to Go. Mike, and hello again. And the floor is yours, my friend.
Okay, thank you, Dirk. So today we just want to provide you with a few insights about the use of AI. I think everybody has heard of AI now, and most distributors are thinking, you know, I need to do something with data science. And we have a very particular and specific approach we recommend people consider. So why don't we go to the first slide and I'll jump right in. Keep going. Yep. Go to the first graphic. There we go. And the first thing we want to emphasize is that, as Dirk said, we're in the age of acceleration. And so time matters so much. And in AI right now, we see a lot of failures in AI projects. In fact, in 2020, Gartner said that the majority of AI projects undertaken by companies in all industries failed to get into production. That's a pretty harrowing statistic. And so how do we avoid that outcome? And the one is to keep it simple. And I'll talk in a moment about how to keep things simple. And another important thing is to take advantage of what you already have. And they're related. So what we have observed with companies that have struggled with AI is they had an approach to AI that had many ideas built into it. And in order to get support for the project, they made it had such a grand ambition for it that it was going to be very difficult to bring the ideas and the skills and the data and everything together and be successful. So let's not do that. Now, what could we do? All companies in distribution and outside of distribution are operated by workflows with knowledge workers. And these knowledge workers and these workflows are of great value to you. And one other area where is an important source of failure is when those existing workflows and the capabilities of the knowledge workers are not really preserved and used in the future solution. So the first thing we recommend is to make sure AI is treat it as incremental to what you already have. Let's not destroy what you have. And so how do you do that? Well, first of all, think about what workflows matter to you and where you might focus. And for distributors right now, we find that the 4 that are on the screen here are areas of high interest. That demand has been very difficult to plan in the past 14 months, as Dirk explained. And a second concept is sensing, where you can't really predict demand very well, but you can monitor demand and keep adjusting demand and following the changes in demand. Suggestive selling is important. Price optimization, as Pradip mentioned, is very important. And a unique form of price optimization is promotion optimization. So easy advice would be, from our perspective, focus on one of these 4. These are workflows that you know really well, and you have excellent expertise in them already. And then ask the question of whoever you're working with, how can I use AI to augment what I already have? And augment is a much better word than replace. Now, why? When you implement a new IT application, normally an IT application comes with a new workflow. And once you change the workflow, then you create confusion. And you resolve the confusion by training the people that are operating the workflow. Wouldn't it be better to bring the AI to the workflow rather than create a new workflow as the first step? If we bring AI to the workflow, it has a huge advantage. So in price optimization, right now, all of your salespeople probably go to a screen to get a price for any product for any particular customer. Wouldn't it be great if you could provide that price without changing the process? And the way you would do that is by sending the new price to exactly the same screen that's been used before. We had an example in the past 12 months where a company, a billion-dollar food distributor with 1,000 salespeople, implemented new pricing without training the sales force. And if you follow this approach where you try to increment what you already have with AI, it leads to an approach that overcomes the problem of resistance and makes it more people want to adopt what you have. And another aspect of this is that your knowledge workers are a great resource for what is working well and what is working poorly. And our company's half sort of process geeks, half AI geeks, okay? The process geeks, we want to understand, well, what do you do? How do you do it? And what problems do you have? And very often, one way or another, the problems can be characterized as the ability to predict something, predict demand, predict the price, predict the inventory level that we need, et cetera. And very often the knowledge workers know a part of the answer. So when we're trying to reach an improvement of a certain level, it's not at all surprising that we can achieve the improvement, half of the improvement that we're after, just by facilitating the knowledge workers' ability to solve the problems that they're already aware of. And it's routine. This happens all the time. The advantage of working this way with the knowledge workers is that you gain their support. And if you can help them a little bit, they have confidence that you can continue to help them. And so if we've solved the problems they know about, then they're more open to the idea of using external data to understand how to carry out their decisions better and to use AI to augment the decisions they already make. So where do you find value with AI? And in general, and I hope I'll describe this in a way that each of you can imagine how it fits in your company. But the general rule is you look for decisions that your knowledge workers are making where they lack insight to all of the information that's required to make the decision well. Another way of saying that is they might have 2 minutes to make a decision that would take 3 hours for them to research to make the decision properly. And probably there's a way that AI can gather that information and provide it to them in a format that works well and will be acceptable to them. So for example, one of the things we try to do is leave the knowledge workers in control of the adoption of the analytics. How do we do that? So first of all, we find out, well, what information do you need to make this decision perfectly? Ideally, then, the AI should be able to provide that information and make a recommended decision supported by the evidence that shows that this recommendation is correct. It's very important. The knowledge workers have a lot of power over your company, a lot of power over your process, and a lot of prestige in your organization. So cultivating their support is essential to make the adoption go quickly. And then we allow them to control the rate of adoption. For example, let's say we were talking about pricing. Everybody understands pricing. We can make price recommendations for every SKU so that each price recommendation could be authorized by a knowledge worker. Not practical to do that, but we give them that option. But then we also allow them to automate the delivery of the recommendation at whatever level of aggregation that they want for this SKU, this class of customers, et cetera. And always we provide that kind of flexibility so that we don't threaten the knowledge workers. We augment their capabilities so that the easier decisions can be made automatically and they can spend more time on the more important decisions. So the last part of this story is just to continue to make improvements. And right now, people aren't worried about the cost of ownership of AI. But those of you who have been in the industry for a long time can tell, each of you will have your own story about the cost of IT and the cost of lots of incremental decisions being made over a long period of time in a way that didn't make a lot of sense. And the same thing's going to happen with AI for many companies, I believe. And it can be avoided. It's avoided by focusing on the workflows so that you don't begin to proliferate another layer of workflows, because that creates a lot of complexity. Integrate the databases so that you share data among the various AI solutions that you support, and make sure you have a way to continuously improve the external data and the algorithms that you're using to support the individual solutions. What we've learned, we've been at this for about 15 years now. And 15 years ago, we had to write all of our own algorithms. 7 or 8 years ago, we wrote about half our algorithms. Now we almost never write an algorithm. But what we do is we keep looking for new algorithms that we can use in a different way. And so when you're talking about demand planning and sensing, you need to structure the solution so a future algorithm that we don't know about can be dropped in a plug and play basis. Really all right, Dirk, let's go on to the next one. Yeah. So important here, adoption's the most important. We don't want to disrupt things. If you keep the workflow the same, that reduces the risk of deployment, it reduces the cost of deployment, and you don't disrupt things and people will accept it. We have an interfacing approach where rather than create a new software to deploy at your company, we operate alongside the existing applications that you have, and we just communicate through application program interfaces, so-called APIs. So we take the history and relevant reference data, and then we send the information that's required to make the decision to the screen that you're already using. Lots of respect for the workforce, and then we build into the solutions opportunity for humans to give feedback on, well, that recommendation is wrong, and here's why it's wrong, et cetera. And then our data scientists use that to continue to make improvements. And overall, AI as a service makes it much easier for companies, because it's going to be hard for you to attract and retain the data scientists that you need to stay up to date. And data scientists, just by the nature of the individuals that go into this business, they want challenge, they want diversity. And so the person that does the best job for you on your most important project is almost going to be eager to take advantage of that experience and take it elsewhere so they can get an even greater project in a new domain to continue to expand their skills. So AI as a service is a good practical way for you to overcome the skill shortage and still have access to the best data science talent that you can find. Okay, and the last one. Then this is an important part of using AI to enable your end-to-end process. So our company is focused on developing AI products that our customers can use. And as Dirk and I were chatting at the beginning, we're trying to do that to reduce the cost and the complexity for individual customers. And the way we do that is then by bringing products to market that individual customers can then configure for their own use. And a key aspect of this is that you should start where it's most important for you, but have a concept that you're going to share data and manage all of the solutions. Same perspective, you'll have an economy of scale as you manage the different solutions. And so flexibility from the start, standardization as much as possible, focus on short ROIs. If someone tells you the ROI on any AI project is more than a year, it's probably more than 5 years. So look for AI projects that have an ROI of less than 6 months, and you might have a good chance. Thank you very much. Enjoyed it.
Wow, fantastic, Mike. I really appreciate that. Thanks, and I love that. Yeah, I love that. You've brought a holistic model to us, right, to develop that roadmap going forward. Bring AI, which is kind of mysterious out there, I believe. So I really appreciate it. Let's pull Pradip in, and if you don't mind, let's talk about this together, guys. And wow, get the three of us together, and we come up on the clock pretty quick. So here's what I'd like to do. As I'm listening to the two of you, here's the thought going through my mind. Pradip, you had made the statement that your mentor had said that distributors are great information machines, that information isn't being used, that data and analytics isn't being utilized. Let's hold on to that for a second, right? And Mike, you talked about, right, the different ways that we can use AI, right, in our organization. So I want to build off of both of those. So guys, if somebody who's joining us today decides that I have to accelerate within my organization data and analytics to grow my business. And Mike, they had to accelerate their use of AI. They know it, but they don't know where to start. Get us in the boardroom with that company who's going to leave this webinar, leave this conversation, and what would be the 1, 2, or 3 key agenda items that they need to put on that first meeting to say, we're going to accelerate data and analytics in our organization and AI in our organization. What does that first agenda look like to drive that conversation? Does that make sense, guys, what I'm asking?
Sure. Want me to go first, Pradip?
Go ahead.
Go for it, Mike.
Sure. So I think starting any task with the end goal in mind is important. And so, companies with distribution in particular, I agree with the decomposition that Pradip talked about, that you have inventory problems, you have demand prediction, you have supplier management, you have pricing, and what's number one? And focus where it's most important, because every organization really has underlying priorities. And if you ignore the business priorities, the project you're going to define is not off to a good start. So first, follow the business priorities. Secondly, I would start small, and start small by doing a proof of concept that might be for a product line or a DC, and demonstrate that it can work there. It does two things. One, it helps your organization learn about the power of AI, and it helps your partner organization learn about your data and the workflows and your knowledge workers and the legacy of the company. And then the last part, and I think this is very important, is focus on speed to deployment. And so as long as you say it has to happen quickly, then a lot of the fluff gets taken away. And you say that the POC has to be done in 60 days, the entire deployment has to be done in 6 months. That forces you to have a simple approach that's effective and that will get results, and everybody in the company will be happy with.
I love it. Thank you, Mike. And a quick follow-up to you. Let's go to your second one, starting small, that proof of concept. What are the 1, 2, or 3 criteria I should be thinking about in selecting that first proof of concept initiative? I know it's got to be aligned to the business goals, but what else should I be thinking about for that first proof of?
That's a great question. The number one answer is find the early adopters, because some people welcome change and some people don't. And if you can get an early adopter to participate, they're also a big advocate for you later on. So that's important. The second one is find something where the result matters. So you don't want this to be seen as a science project. You want it to be seen as an important strategic initiative. And the third one, measure it and advertise what you're measuring and show what the impact was, and then talk about the ROI. People don't really care too much about the technology. They care about what it brings to them.
Beautiful. I appreciate it, Mike. Great thought.
Pleasure.
So Pradip, get me in that conference room with the leadership team here. What should I be thinking about if I want to accelerate, the power of data and analytics to grow my business here?
Yes, I mean, very similar to what Mike said. I probably might restate a few things, but again, I would not deviate much from what Mike said. The first thing is accountability. I mean, that's what I would start with, because your leaders, right? I mean, the key people in the organization, how often do they get together? How often does the core team get together? They have so many other things being discussed. When it comes to sales, we hold the salespeople accountable, right? Go get the sales dollars. When it comes to pricing, we hold the pricing analyst accountable. When it comes to inventory, we hold the purchasing manager accountable. When it comes to analytics adoption, who's going to really move the ball forward? Because if you don't have a champion, you need a champion. And often companies are starting to look at chief profitability officers, right? CPOs. I mean, they're not analytics, but they're looking at chief profitability officers who can really use data to drive those decisions, because that is where I think the whole thing starts. Or else it'll just be a boardroom conversation. It'll be a nice conversation. You have lunch, you have a great coffee, and walk out. It's all disappears. So I would start with accountability. The second thing is start where it matters most. In distribution, if you look at it, most of the action and noise happens on the sales side. Because if you look at the organization, number of people touching the customers, I mean, they are on the discovery stage. They are discovering, they're negotiating, they're making decisions on the fly. I would say anything to touch the sales team is what is going to give you the highest return on investment. To Mike's point, I mean, those quick wins are easily going to come from the sales side, anything to do with the sales side. And the last thing is definitely look for those quick wins. Promote it, highlight the value internally. And these are 3 things I would recommend. And one thing I would say strongly not look at what distributors often do is distributors are afraid to make the move first. We're always like that. We are very risk averse. So one thing I would strongly say is don't wait for the competition to make the move first, and wait to learn from them and try to do it better. Because if that is going to be the mindset, then distribution is going to be left far, far behind. We want to keep this moving forward. So don't wait for the competition. You can look at those success stories, but make a decision, bring an accountability person, then just move forward with it, because sometimes the experiment is worth the journey.
Pradip, I love it. Let me go back to that last point and make the move first. As we've worked with CEOs in our think tanks and a number of associations, we've developed this spectrum of distributors, right? And classified distributors into 4 categories. No right, no wrong, based on your goals, your strategies as the owner and leadership of the team. The first is the lifestyle type business, right? The second is what we call the late adopter. Early adopter is third. And fourth is the professional and entrepreneurial. And each of them make decisions differently. Each of them, right, look at the future and the acceleration of change differently. So from your experiences, what does it take, for distributors, right, to make that move first? Because that's a hard thing.
Yes.
When things are going, I mean, we've come out of the pandemic okay, many of our customers and the like, right, from a business perspective. Now you're saying make a different move first. Help me walk. What should I be thinking about as the leader of that organization to do that?
So one thing, at least I can speak to the majority of the distributors, right? Most of the distributors are entrepreneurs. I mean, they're self-made independent decisions. The challenge over there is, I mean, we have to start somewhere, but again, where do we start is the question. These leaders have been in the position for a long period of time, and they've not seen failures, right? They've seen failures, but they've overtaken that with success. So they pretty much handle every single time. So over 30 years, they've done it. They've been very seasoned. But distributors need to realize that they are not going to be here forever to really guide the next set of leaders in the organization. So the first thing is really identify your plan. Because, I mean, in our company, we talk about if one of us is not able to make it tomorrow for a week, what is the plan? What is plan B? What is the content? What is the team? What is the second string team? I mean, if you look at just NFL is a great analogy, right? Or NFL, you've got 5 quarterbacks, 3 quarterbacks in a team. It's not because they're afraid. I mean, some of them might not even play the game, get to see the play field, but they plan for it, right? Distributors just we spend so much time watching football, right? I mean, I watch football. I'm a big fan of football, college, school, Canadian football, every single football. But I think there are great learnings for us if we can start building the team, not one team driving it, but there are multiple teams. I think that is something it's going to be very difficult to do, but I think that's where it starts. If you don't take that NFL mindset, the legacy mindset, and bring it into distribution, then we're going to be operating with the same team for a long period of time. And then find a like, what is going to happen? My kids don't like distribution. They like analytics. They like technology. They like finance. They don't like distribution. So first thing is we have to sell that distribution is a fantastic opportunity to our team, to the next generation. I think that is where the process starts. I know it's not easy. It's easier said than done, but I think that is where it starts. And building that second leadership team is very critical.
I love it, Pradip. And if you don't mind, so first to your NFL example, that second and third string quarterback, that third string quarterback who's getting like $6 million a year for being on the side. I've been looking for a job like that for a long time, man. And if you find one for consulting and distribution, you let me know, all right? Because I want that.
Absolutely, Doug. If I knew the secret, I wouldn't be here. Right. I would probably be there.
No doubt. So, and then real quick, and we're up against the clock, guys, and I'll ask you to share, how our listeners can meet you. But I loved what you're saying. And the words I wrote down, Pradip, as you were talking, was inject youth, right? I think if we want to really accelerate the possibilities of AI and data and analytics and other things in our organization, I think it's so critical, to your point, that we absolutely find a way to inject youth in the organization. This younger generation sees the world differently than us. They have different behaviors. They have different expectations. And by the way, they understand the market from a different lens. I'm not saying a right way, but from a different lens than us. And I think to the degree we can inject youth into that boardroom, right, to help us see the market different ways and the potential of technology, in this case, AI, data, and analytics, it's going to absolutely allow us to accelerate that decision-making that we talked about. So guys, we're up against the hour. Why don't you share with everybody how they can meet you? And then I have some closing thoughts, if you don't mind. All right, Mike?
Yeah, mine's easy. It's mike@analyticstogo.com.
Got it. Thank you so much. Pradip?
So just go to ActVantage, our website, actvantage.com, and you should be able to get in touch with me directly, or first name, Pradip, Pradip, @actvantage.com. And LinkedIn is always the best way to connect because it's easier.
Yeah, agreed. So Mike and Pradip, thank you so very much. And if you don't mind, I'm going to piggyback one last thing to close it all up on something that Pradip, you had said about, that next generation and the like. And I think you mentioned about your kids, they like data and analytics and technology, but not necessarily distribution. I was having a conversation yesterday with the individual who heads up learning for a national association, and her son is 24, doesn't want to go to college, but is earning a good living at Verizon right now, right? But doesn't get the benefits and the like. And he wants to do something else, but he looks at distribution and doesn't, from what he sees, he's not interested in it, to your point, Pradip. And I think we collectively need to do a better job in changing that narrative. And one of the things I'd like to suggest to the listeners is, I'll say, follow me on LinkedIn over the next month or so, next summer. We're about ready to launch an initiative called We Supply America. And it's going to be a national campaign that truly is designed to change this narrative, Pradip and Mike, as you guys talked about, right? If we're going to grow our businesses in the age of acceleration, we have to talk about the noble calling of distribution. And distributors are much more than the products on their shelves. And I think the youth who you talked about need to understand that. I think our employees need to understand that. I think our suppliers need to understand that. And I think our local communities need to understand that as well. And we're about ready to get in a 38-foot RV, and we're going to spend the summer crisscrossing this country, meeting distributors, hearing and telling those stories about the noble calling of distribution and how they're taking what you've shared with us, Pradip, and how what you shared with us, Mike, to accelerate their growth in this age of acceleration. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. I think it's been great. Yep. Okay, guys, you good?
Thank you, Dirk. Thank you, everyone, for listening today.
Guys,
see you, Mike.
Thanks for being here. Mike, Pradip, let's do this again. And everybody else watching on LinkedIn, on the webinar, thanks so much for being with us. And until next time, go out there and accelerate your growth, guys.
Take it all.